Good evening. Good evening. I'm going to take a couple of moments to get up people. Let's see. I'm going to get up set up while people are coming in. I'm going to get the chat opened up here. Hello, Lizzie. How are you? Thanks for joining. Lizzie in New Jersey. You're up late. Western New York. Man, nobody sleeps on the East Coast. Marty, what's up from Colorado? How are you? Portland, Providence, Rhode Island. Hello, Pensacola, Florida, Utah, Ashford, Washington. We're piling in here, guys. This is fantastic. I'm going to give it another minute or so for people to get on board and then we'll get started. Hello from Santa Monica, California, Tennessee. What's up? Great to have you guys here this evening. Fresno. I know who that guy is. Nick from Fresno. What's up, buddy? Regional North Southwest Australia, Orleans, Ontario, Vancouver, BC. Another day in paradise. Sunny Fresno. It's always sunny in Fresno, huh, Nick? Hampton, VA in the house. Hello, Renee. Okay, for those of you who've joined us so far, thank you so much for giving me your time this evening. It means the world to us. My name is Damon Deschamp. I'm the co-owner with my wife Natalie of the Trailer Made team, the Tiny House Experts, TM Frame Systems, and the Tiny House Talk Show. We'll go through a 1 hour session here. We're going to have about a 45-minute discussion. I've got it kind of broken down here in an outline so I can stay focused. I'm a little too ADHD to just wing this. Um, the the intro here, we'll get about 5 minutes of that. I'm going to talk about the philosophy, our foundation philosophy of Trailer Made. We'll spend a few minutes on that. Cold form steel. Excuse me. Why did we choose it? Why do we support it and believe in it? I'm going to talk a little bit about decisions in design, picking materials for your exterior, uh, the facade, how you want that to perform based on the climate zone and how you're going to live and operate out of your tiny home. Crafting dreams within a budget, how to build your tiny house without breaking the bank, and then DIY versus pre-built. Your tiny home, it's your choice. You get the choice nowadays to decide if you want to build it yourself or have one of the tiny house experts that we do business with out there in planet Earth to maybe build your home. And then we'll wrap that up, have a couple of moments to reflect, conclude, and then we'll open up about the last 15 minutes for Q&A for everyone, okay? Um, let's see here. Patchouli to everyone. Who is this? You like that beard, Nick? That's official old man status now. That's almost the half centurion mark. That's the mark of greatness when you get the stripe down the middle, huh? Chantel, good to see you. Thank you. Thank you for laughing at that attempt at a joke. We'll go ahead and get started, guys. The reason I've got it set off to the side here is I brought a few props here next to me. We'll talk about that in just about 10 or 15 minutes. And I'm going to be able to kind of run through my notes and show you some examples of things that I brought for everybody today, but I'm not going to be able to jump in a whole lot on the Q&A until we open that up there till the end. So please don't think I'm being rude or impolite. I'm just going to try to stay focused because I got a lot that I want to cover with everybody this evening, especially for everybody on the East Coast that stayed up way past bedtime to pull this off with me tonight. So thank you again for everybody. My name is Damon Deschamp. Again, as I mentioned a moment ago, I'm the co-owner and founder of Trailer Made Custom Trailers here in Western Colorado, the sunny town of Olathe. If you know our sweet corn, then you're familiar with us here in Colorado. Um, my wife Natalie and I started this back in 2012, and kind of talk a little bit about how we we didn't start a tiny house company at all. We started a trailer company first, and the way that kind of how we became intertwined with the tiny house industry was um, this guy by the name of Byron came in and asked if we built custom trailers, and I said, "Yeah, man. What out oil and gas company or energy company are you with?" Because that's what we were doing at that time. And he said, "Oh no, I'm going to do something very different. I'm going into business building tiny homes. Have you ever heard of that?" And I thought, man, yeah, we've seen the show a couple times on television. Um, Not really knowing that fast forwarding, 18 months, we'd be on five television shows every week. What a bizarre twist of events for that guy to have walked through my door and asked me to build our tiny house trailer number one, um, which we saw kind of what was at the fingertips of the market at the time. Wasn't a lot available. This was back kind of when people were still using repurposed mobile home trailers or car haulers and just some crazy wild out there stuff to build a structure on that they were going to live inside of and have it as a dwelling. So we approached it a little differently. We built a foundation first and then figured out how to make it become a really great trailer after the fact of doing job number one, which is to support the trailer, or excuse me, to support the structure that's sitting on top of the trailer. So we really built the foundation that this industry stands on today. Um, so that's kind of how we got started. So from 2012 to 2016, we perfected the tiny house foundation on wheels. That's what our legacy product is. And at that time, we had been exposed to light gauge steel framing and CFS. Um, and that's what we'll call it from here on out, CFS, for cold formed steel. And that's the stuff I've got sitting here next to me, and I'll talk about that more in just a couple more minutes. Um, but we didn't want to just be a one trick pony. We always knew that our plan was to continue to innovate, not just the trailer. Once you've kind of perfected that, it's okay to move on and try and do better at other things. So in 2016, we brought some equipment and things on for steel framing, and CFS rolling equipment software was built for us in house, and we started offering tiny house kits made out of light gauge or CFS steel. Um, and that just kind of kept growing until the point that we are today. Now, the philosophy. Let me touch on our company's philosophy. It says so on our brochure. The best built house on planet Earth is only as good as the foundation it stands on. So we wanted to build the best foundation on Earth, and we really feel that we've done that, and we hope that you out there in the audience agree. Um, our uh, our our approach was so that we could have a professional level output, no matter if you're a do-it-yourselfer or if you're a pro builder out there with a sign and a shingle hung and you build tiny homes for a living, or if this is just your first house and you're going to build it yourself. We want to make sure that everybody has the same level of quality at the end of that project when they're done working on it. So it all begins with the foundation, and that was kind of our philosophy all along. Um, so to speak on cold form steel for a minute and touch on this, we're speaking about how to build a house the right way, and through trial and error and lots of repetition, we've kind of learned what works and what doesn't work well long term. We've been doing this for more than 10 years now, so we've seen kind of what's out there and mostly what people had chosen to do back in the early days versus what it's morphed and evolved into today. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and the the emphasis again about having a solid foundation to start with, the bones of the house. So whether you're a wood builder, steel frame builder, and if it's a trailer made foundation or if it's somebody else out there on planet Earth, you want to make sure that the bones are the absolute best they can be. That's what the bottom line is behind our philosophy. And we've perfected the art of building the bones of tiny homes in all shapes and sizes and all modalities, on wheels and off wheels. But more than anything, those are the things that you really can't get wrong. And in our podcast on YouTube or wherever you download your podcast, there's an episode where we talk about that, actually, how to build a tiny house the right way, and we speak to different building materials. So I'll touch on a little bit of that throughout this presentation, but there's some other stuff in there too. Best practice, code, certification, and design. So we've got a little bit more to cover than just what we do in house. So to kind of wrap that up, Why do we believe in cold form steel versus wood? Um, there's a number of reasons. I want to touch on that for just a quick second. And I've brought a couple of visual aids. I got a piece of 2x4 lumber here with me. And I'm going to try and do this without wrecking the microphone and your guys' ears. We have a piece of cold form steel here. So we've got about a foot of each one, 12 inches here. This weighs about a pound. This weighs about 3/4 of a pound. So right out of the gate, one of the reasons that we like steel over wood is the weight savings. It's 25% on the framing of the house. A couple of the other reasons we like it is this is pretty strong and we've been doing this a long time. This is 4 times the strength of this. And we've been doing this a long time too. We just haven't been doing this as much in the residential world. In fact, I would probably say it's used more today in the tiny house industry than it is in residential construction. But in commercial construction, this has been around for half a century, 50 years plus. This technology has just been kind of trickled down to become more available to most people. So this is something to consider if you're building a tiny home. If weight is something that you're considering, if you're in a high wind area, down in Florida, somewhere Hurricane Alley, where you got excessive wind potentially, you might want to consider framing out of steel. The other things that we like about steel over wood, and again, I'm not saying that wood is bad. We're just talking about why we picked steel to frame our homes with, and we have several hundred cases of these to kind of prove this and back this information up. So let's talk about thermodynamics for just a second, since we're in the journey of building a tiny house the right way. Um, this has historically been what people tell me is warmer and creates a tighter thermal envelope in a wall system whenever it's used to build. So we have this every 16 inches. We got one here, we got one here, we got one here. So we've got 3 of these stacked up, just as an example. I got one here, one here, one here. Now, this is R3. Okay. I can't do anything to change that. So, however, I'm going to set up my insulation in between there. I've got a cavity that I can insulate, and then I've got 2 bookends that I cannot insulate. So I have a vent, and then I have a space that I can insulate. That's my insulated cavity. And then I have another vent. So every 16 inches, we have an inch and a half that's only R3. And I keep stacking that up around the perimeter of the house. Sorry, I'm leaning into the microphone here. I don't want to lose the audio. I keep stacking this up, and this is 4.5 inches over 1, 2, 3 studs. Now that's 30. So that becomes this tall and this tall and this tall. And essentially the math works this way: 16 inches on center times an inch and a half equals 25% of the perimeter of your home. So what that's basically telling you is that inside your wall system, if you frame with lumber, one of your 4 walls, or 25% of your thermal envelope, is just R3 2x4s or 2x6s. So that's where we've worked hard to try and dispel the myth that wood is warmer and tighter than steel, for example. It's a little bit less expensive, and it's certainly more forgiving if you're out there kind of designing at the table saw or at the job site and building this thing from your mind. But I don't know that's the best approach for everybody. Some people that works great, but maybe not for everybody. Don't necessarily just kind of wing it and build it as you go, so that you can make amendments if you decide to do things later on. That's we encourage planning in the front end of the project so that you don't end up having to make changes later, and that gives you the lane to run in with CFS or cold form steel. So really quick, let me grab a couple pieces of that. So we talked about that thermal envelope tying up or stacking up rather to an inch and a half, 3 inches, 4.5, and then it basically turns into one of our walls is only R3. Okay, so I got 3 2x4s here in my hand, and this one's bent. I didn't bring 3 pieces of preformed steel with me, but this is essentially 3 steel 2x4s going through the same wall. So I have a stud, right? And the thing is that it's open profile. So its cross section is less than 40 thousandths of an inch thick. Okay. And I'm sorry, I'm looking down here so I can make sure that you guys can see this. But 40 thousandths, 80 thousandths, that's the equivalent of this, right? And so on, right? Now, I'm getting a 13-inch cavity filled with wood every 16 inches. That 13-inch cavity has my insulation in it. With cold form steel, I have nearly a full 16 inches in between the two pieces of sheet metal that have been bent into a structural member. So even though this is the cross section or the width of a 2x4, it's open inside. So I can actually insulate. Let me zoom in here a little bit. I can insulate all of this area right here. Okay. So all of this gets insulated. So that means this is where my thermal break happens. And by the time it crosses that steel section here, this web, the insulation on both sides of that has heat sunk it away to where it doesn't make it into the inside of the structure as quickly or as severely. So just to kind of put that into perspective, here's a couple of pieces of sheet metal, and when I stack those together, this is what two by fours out of steel does to your thermal envelope on the outside. Okay. So that's why we pick steel. 4 times the strength, 25% lighter. Takes one tool to put it together, kind of like IKEA furniture. We really wanted to make sure that it was the everyday man or woman could put this together and not have an issue. And if you did, we're only a phone call away. So moving on to that next thing, let's speak about decisions in design, roofing and exteriors. We get asked this question a lot, and it's always relevant to um, bring to light what works and what doesn't work in our experience. Again, we don't know everything, but we have done this for a long time, and we've seen a lot of different things attempted, and some work great, and some maybe miss the mark just a bit. Um, so one of the things that I've been asked, and this is going to blow everybody's head off their shoulders, I'm sure. Um, can I use sheetrock inside my tiny home? And the simple answer is it depends. If you're going to move this thing around like a travel trailer, which we'll talk about that more in a moment. If you're going to move this around like a travel trailer and you're here for a week, there for a month, there for 2 months, there for 10 days, then you may not want to sheetrock it because it will eventually fail you and start cracking in places in the joinery. So, however, if this is more of a park model situation for you where you're kind of building this at one location and you're moving it to another location, maybe with an occasional relocate in its future down the road, then sure, go ahead and use sheetrock. I have no problem with it, especially with light gauge steel, because they don't move like wood does. Um, so that was one of the things that in decisions in design, and I wanted to touch on that. I hope nobody flames me into oblivion because I said yes, you can build with sheetrock in a tiny house, but we've done it dozens and dozens of times, and we've seen these homes months and years after we've placed them, and we've looked for damage before I came on here and said what I just told everybody. So the short answer is yes, you can use sheetrock inside your home if your framing is done correctly. That's the caveat. Okay, so um, next one I get asked a lot is about roofing, and the most important thing to think of in roofing is where's it going to live most of its life. If you travel, then consider the wind as part of the environment that the home lives in. So whatever's going to carry the most wind resistance to your specific location. The other part, snow load or moisture content, consistent rainfall and things like that, might sway you back and forth between using kind of a standing seam roof material or using a PBR type of panel. So panels with a bunch of screws in the top of it. Consensus is generally from roofing professionals that all of those penetrations in the roof are bad for snow load. So to use standing seam hidden fastener instead, and what that does is give you a couple of extra redundant layers of sheet metal that are kind of diverting water away where it might get into your roof somewhere else. So that's the principle behind when to choose what kind of roof. Here in snow country, most of our homes that leave here and go around in Colorado are 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 feet in elevation and have a pretty heavy, seasonal snow load. So when that starts to melt or slough off, we have to make sure that those things are not going to penetrate into the house through a membrane. So there's lots and lots of steps to roofing correctly. And if you have specific questions about that, you can always DM us on Instagram at TrailerMade Trailers. We're on TikTok at the Tiny House Experts. You can also leave comments or questions on our YouTube channel at the Tiny House Experts as well. So speak to those things directly with you if you have questions through those platforms. And also to let you know, lastly, kind of about siding. Let's talk about the outside for a second, and then let's go inside and talk about how to kind of wrap up a thermal envelope and make it tight. Um, so the most important thing to remember is getting water away from your exterior. Some people use rain screen. Some people use Tyvek wrap. Some people use a zip board or zip system with tape and seal it shut that way. None of those are right or wrong. They're just meant to be done exactly the way the manufacturers recommend. If you do something out of order, or take zip tape, for example, I want to point this out. There is a warranty in place if you tape it with their zip system tape, and you have to use the embossed zip system roller that ensures adhesion between the green board or red board and the black tape. Sorry about my dog. She's barking at the neighbor outside the window. The There's several systems that are kind of a one and done. You stick the board up and then you tape the reveals shut, and then it's a sealed up exterior envelope. So we use Oxboard or OxIS. We use the zip system. We've used OSB and good old fashioned Tyvek and flashing tape. So, uh, in terms of it's all what works best for you, your budget, and your climate. And if you have questions, there's lots of pro builders here on this platform on tinyhouse.com. I saw one over here making jabs about me a little earlier about my beard. Nick at California Tiny House, I see you over there lurking, man. Yeah, anybody that's done this lots and lots of times can help you out and answer questions about that specifically too. Um, let's move on now to just a couple of moments about insulation, and then we'll take our next leap into craftsmanship and best practices. Um, Insulation, that one's one that again, I want to speak to my opinion and our personal anecdotal experience. We personally install closed cell spray foam in our homes. The stuff we use is some of the lowest toxicity levels that's available commercially, made by a company called Natural Polymers. And they work really hard to make sure that any off gassing or anything that takes place after the stuff is installed, once it's cured, it cures very quickly with not much more than isopropyl alcohol type of propellant. So it evaporates very quickly. It doesn't leave a bunch of funky stuff in the air, either in the home or outside of the home, out in the environment after we've installed it. So that's one of our practices. We use the greenest spray foam that we can use. I know there are people out there that have sensitivities to toxins and solvents, and maybe spray foam just isn't going to jive for you, and that's 100% okay. It's not my job to try and talk everybody into it. I just know it works pretty great for the majority of the people that have asked us to install it. So that's our position on spray foam. And we get asked a lot about rock wool and recycled denim, pink fiberglass, glass batting, and lots and lots of other, obscure, not as mainstream type of insulation materials. And to several of those, I can say just do your research. Rock wool, people say there's a large, it doesn't retain water. And I live in Colorado, where I've seen plants grown indoors or outdoors. You can fill in the blanks what kind of plants I'm talking about, in cubes of rock wool, where water is dripped onto them at certain times throughout the day and the night, and a giant plant grows out of something that's not supposed to retain water for it's holding 4 to 5 times its volume in liquid. So rock wool, I guess maybe it's formulated different for the walls, but I'm not 100% certain on that. All I can say is, there's a little Bill Nye Science guy out there that can do that experiment. Maybe it's on a YouTube video, or maybe we'll do that on a YouTube video and put it on our channel. But that's my concern for rock wool. I've always had the worst case scenario, if there's some little bitty leak in my roof somewhere, because right, and that gets into my wall system somehow. Now I've turned that into a mushroom farm, and I don't think anybody wants that. So again, not only is roofing important, it's very, very important, but also what material is in your wall. If you have something that can potentially retain moisture, it can be more damaging than just the little roof leak can be. So that's kind of my take on that personally. And again, I'm not bashing any manufacturer or utilizer of rock wool as an insulation material. I'm not familiar enough with it. I said what my experience was with it, and it was used as a growing medium for plants. Um, so I don't know how well it does. If anybody has any of that information, we can wrap that up here at the end in the last 15 minutes. Um, so pink fiberglass, that's the good old standby. It gives you an R5 per inch kind of value. The spray foam stuff that we use is R7 per inch. So it's considerably, higher performance than most anything else out there. Colorado doesn't let us, or maybe even the United States. There's been rumors that there's higher R value closed cell spray foams out there, but the rumor also has it is that their toxicity level isn't acceptable for most states' EPA regulations. So, Colorado being one of those states. So we spray right up to the max. That's our 7.2, and that's probably somewhere in the 6.5 to 7 range. Most spray foam companies out there that would come install spray foam for anybody out there listening, their closed cell probably performs in that 6.5 to 7 range as well. Okay, so not to talk that to death, we're kind of keeping on schedule here. It's almost 8:30, or excuse me, 7:30 there on the West Coast. It's like 2:30 a.m. on the East Coast or something. You guys have been up for a while. Thank you again for listening. Let's talk about craftsmanship and best practice for just a minute. Um, the craftsmanship in the industry as a whole, not just our company, but as a whole, started at one level and over time kind of ascended to another level. And I think we'd all agree with that, in indefinitely. So the most important thing is to share the knowledge and make sure that the knowledge that you're sharing is good knowledge. That's key. Make sure that it's proven knowledge. That's also key. And make sure that it's factual knowledge. That's the third key. So, to keep craftsmanship evolving and best practices growing in the industry, whether you're a builder or a DIYer or a daydreamer or just a fan, um, check your base, check your knowledge, and fact check the stuff you see and hear out there. Um, for a long time, the argument, I'm sorry, not the argument, it's not, I guess the complaint that we hear on the telephones in our day job at work is I go out to the internet and I see the same pretty vague, not super informative information regurgitated from site to site to site. And I don't know really how to respond to that. So that's kind of one of the reasons that we're doing this year. I know this event's been going on for many years now, and we're excited and embarrassed both at the same time to have taken this long to come be a part of it, and we're thrilled to be here. But again, it's most important that everybody's information kind of matches the truth and the facts and science and that sort of thing. So, facts are facts. What I was showing you here about this stuff, this is easily attainable information online. You can look this up on Clark Dietrich's website. What kind of thermodynamics steel studs have across a dimension versus 2x4 or 2x6 lumber. So this is proven, guys and girls. This isn't just my opinion on that stuff. So that's what we do to make sure the best practices are kind of upheld and they evolve as well in the industry. I have the really, really fortunate position to sit next to a telephone and talk to hundreds and hundreds of really, really smart people every day, and learn from them and learn better building practices and conversations that start with, hey, you guys should try this material. There was one over here I saw there was a material somebody was talking about in the bathroom. So I'm gonna ask you to kind of remember that if you're still listening, and bring that up here at the Q&A session once we start about 7:45 West Coast time. Um, so the all of this kind of makes they're I guess to tell you the wrap up is these are non-negotiables for us, and they should be for any professional or DIY project. Insulation and weatherproofing are just non-negotiable. You can't let water get in, and you don't want to let heat out or cold in, or vice versa, depending on where you're at. And you want to tackle all of the thermal bridges that you find in the design of your tiny home and address those accordingly. Any potential water spots where moisture can get in and there's an entrance point, you want to address that. You want to tackle that. So um, that's a really uh, kind of a wrap up statement on how we approach craftsmanship and best practice. It's looking at what the life of that home is going to look like in 10 or 15 years. Is it still going to be inhabitable? Is it still, the front door open and close like it did on day one or year one, year five? Now we're on along 5, 10, 15 years. And now we have 10 plus years of case studies on lots of homes. And that's why things have evolved and changed. A wood frame house on 24-inch centers with only 2x4s built on an old, used second or third hand 7,000 GVW rated trailer, car hauler kind of thing, that might not have a 15 or 20-year life expectancy. It all depends. But the standards and the practices, and that's kind of a perfect segue into the next section. And the next to last thing we'll talk about here. Codes and certifications are coming into place little by little. So I want to talk about that for a moment. I know on I think Wednesday, Alex from Pacific West spoke and was giving details about how to certify your tiny house to ANSI code RV 119.2 or point 0.5, whichever one works best for you. We did a podcast episode on the Tiny House Experts YouTube channel. If you haven't already had a chance to go subscribe to that, please do and listen to that episode. It's a good one. It's the debunking 4 myths around tiny houses. And we speak in detail about the code. And I'll touch on that for just a moment. There's two basic factions of RV code. ANSI is the governing body or underwriting agency that says, here's how you should build it. And companies like Pacific West, the RVIA, NOAA, NTA out on the West Coast, those guys kind of underwrite that certification that ANSI puts forth. So that's a bit how it works. They're agents of the governing agency. They're third party independent, and they tell you to make changes to match their rules and requirements. And it's a pretty good symbiotic relationship the way that works. And here in Colorado, we've gone so far as to do a new tiny house code for those of you who want to participate in a certificate of occupancy application and live in it like a full-time house. It's a trickier, stickier process. It's much more like IRC, residential construction code. It's got some extra steps and things involved in that, but it should, because you're living in the thing full time and you're asking the county or the state permission to live in that structure 365 days a year potentially. They have to make sure that it's safe for you or someone else to live in. So I'm all for it. I'm not against the tiny house code and certifications coming in to kind of make the whole industry safer and better for everyone on this side and on your side as well. Those of you who are buying or living or building your own home in the future, you want good, responsible builders out there in the market. There's been no shortage of scandalous activity in the tiny house industry since we started in it, and those things all kind of take care of themselves in time. So I think the ones that are around today, by and large, are the ones that do it right, or at least try really, really hard to get it right as much as they possibly can. And some of us do. We kind of fake it a little bit till we make it, because every day is a new step forward in a brand new industry that we don't know what adventure it holds for us next. So making sure that you have an RV certification on your home is important, because you're going to have to ask a township or a county or some governing agency potentially permission to move this thing into their jurisdiction and hook it up to their hook it up to their water and sewer and electrical grids, ask their fire department to protect it, that sort of thing. So they're going to probably look for a little vetting from you to make sure that everything's up to snuff. So ANSI is that first code of many that can do this. You can also do IRC modular. You can do HUD. That's like a mobile home certification. And again, I don't want to get too far off topic. This is on our podcast. We go way deeper into those, but we do the ANSI 119.5, or excuse me, yeah, the ANSI 119.5, because that is a park model RV certification. Um, Most of the tiny homes built in the last 10 or 12 years on our trailers or by our hands don't travel that often, very rarely, if ever. The few outliers are the exception, but certainly not the rule. And the most important thing to know is that wherever you go and you want to put this, unless it's privately owned land where there's very little, oversight from a county official, you're going to have to present some sort of documentation to be able to plug this thing in and get power to it and get water to it, that sort of thing. What are you going to do with your wastewater? You got to hook that up somewhere. So that's why code and regulation are both kind of important to make sure that we're all playing by the rules and people aren't getting harmed. We're not creating, environmental situations where people are dumping black water out onto, open land and, risking others' health, that sort of thing. So that's kind of the reason behind building responsibly with codes and certifications in place, and why it's important to approach your project with a certification. The pro builders today, they kind of all know it. That's your key to financing a tiny home. That's your key to insuring a tiny home, and that's your key to living in a tiny home. So that's kind of a quick wrap up about code and compliance there, and certification and building responsibly. So next couple of topics. I got about 5 more seconds here, 5 minutes really. DIY versus pre-built. Your tiny home, your choice. I'm going to tell you a little something about that. Nick, I hope you're still listening, man, because this is important for builders and DIYers. The market has evolved. There are fewer builders than there were 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, pre-pandemic, let's say. The bonanza back in the early days, the gold rush, if you will, lots of people entering the market of the tiny house industry willy-nilly and exiting it almost as quickly. I think that bonanza has kind of come and gone. And Nick, I want to ask you if you feel that arc and trajectory has kind of come and gone. And those of our colleagues that have been here since the beginning that are still here today, like I said, I feel they do it right more than get it wrong. And they've built their reputations and earned people's trust out there in the market by doing it right. So that's that's the most important thing that take away from this next topic: DIY versus pre-built. Had a kid tell me the other day, the adventure begins when the first thing goes wrong on your well-planned trip or something like that, or project. And you don't want the adventure to be the negative things. So do your homework, make sure that the builders that you're communicating with about maybe building a home for you are vetted, are trusted. Read those reviews, man. Those are out there for a reason. And if there's more than just the outlier or the occasional uh, whatever, if you see red flag after red flag after red flag, there's probably a reason why. Where there's smoke, there's fire. So just buyer beware. We hear horror stories every week sitting at our desk, and it turns our stomach, because there's so many great people in this business, and there's so many great people that are drawn to this industry and want to live this lifestyle, and then their first entrance into it is they get ripped off for 50 or 100,000 bucks, and they never get a tiny house out of it. And that hurts, and it's embarrassing to all of us in this industry. And if you're one of those people who do that to customers, please stop. Customers, please don't become a statistic. Make sure that you're out there checking the receipts, as they say out there. And don't just give your money to anybody. Make sure that somebody you can trust. Now, whether you build it yourself or whether you have it built, that's really up to you. Not everybody's got it in the budget to have a master craftsman like a lot of my professional colleagues in the B2B world, build their home from start to finish. We understand that. That's why we offer a DIY kit that lets you go to whatever level of completion you're not comfortable doing by yourself. And once you find that place where you want to take it over, we hand you the project and let you move on with it. So there's really no barrier to entry now these days into tiny homes. We have certifications that everybody that's still building today kind of builds by the rules. There's an IKEA level sort of assembly method out there that TrailerMade and the tiny house experts offer to you. You have fantastic companies like California Tiny House and fantastic friends and colleagues like Nick telling me about my beard, but also building pretty great houses in the meantime. And if you're in the Fresno area for any reason and you want to go see how it's done well and how it's done right, go knock on his door and ask for a tour. It's a pretty incredible place to see. So um, the difference between kits or DIY and pre-built, having someone else build it, custom costs more. And with the DIY route, you can kind of, tune the knob of custom without really breaking the bank yourself. And you're not tying up your contractor or your builder's time by making those adjustments on the fly. So get an idea of what you may or may not want to customize, and you can probably DIY this thing as a kit or as a from scratch project, starting with the right foundation for the job. Um, whether whether you're doing, let me back up to that in just a second. The pre-built versus DIY. Now, I get asked how much is it? I don't know. I don't know how much California Tiny House charges for their models. It's probably on their website. Modern Tiny Living, Nook Tiny Homes down in Texas. Lots of friends and colleagues. They're all over the board, and you can probably find something in the very very low end, and you can find something in the very 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 high end if you go look hard enough. I'm sure of it. We kind of exist in a different space. We go up or down based on your budget. So we'll do as much or as little with you, for you, on your behalf as you want to spend. And that's for not just the DIYers out there, but also our builders. You guys know that too. We've worked with you for many many years. Some of you see me very very tired and road weary, getting out of the truck at all hours of the day and night on both coasts, helping you unload stuff when we were starting these businesses 8 and 10 and 12 years ago. So quite the journey and quite the memory, to look back, the memory book rather, to look back on what the last decade in the tiny house industry has been like for us. And I'll just kind of wrap that up with a thank you from everybody that tuned in tonight and will watch this in the future. It means the world to us that you guys have given us your time and your ear tonight, and you've given your mind and hopefully your heart and soul to the tiny house movement like we have. And thank you so much. It's time for Q&A, so I'm going to open that up. I'm going to have to scoot my computer in a little bit because these are old eyes and they weld, so I can't read very good. So I'm going to scoot that up, and then I'll let the questions begin, and we'll take the last 15 minutes of our presentation to do the best Q&A that I can do for you guys. All right, let's get going. I can only speak for us, my best guess for others, depending on how far along. Andrea, thank you for taking the time to listen to us, to listen to me. And it was a pleasure to have all of you here. Kimberly, Kenny, everyone. Let's see. Here we go. Here we got some coming in talking about shells. Oh, shells. Yeah, yeah. You do shells, Nick. I got you. Okay. Let me move this over this way. There we go. Steven says, what do we do for interior walls if not GWB? What's GWB? Cost of a shell. Patchouli. Um, that's kind of what Nick said. It depends. We sell an 8x20 down around 20 grand for a shell, and they're even a little less if you knock it down and build it yourself when you get home. Michael Kent, thank you for listening, sir. Oh, sorry, Steven, drywall. Um, gypsum whiteboard, maybe? Is that, oh, gorgeous white beards. See, I like that one way better. GWB, yeah. Not quite white yet, man. Give me a break. We I've seen shiplap used a lot. I've seen there's a company called just escaped me, Wall Theory. My friend Jared Tachi, what's up, Jared? Ghost Design and Build. He did a his tiny house build. He did the year long documentary of that on his YouTube channel at Jared Tachi, TOCCI. Check that out if you want to see some other materials. It was Wall Theory, and he turned me on to them. We've got a couple projects in the pipeline that are actually going to be our first ones with Wall Theory products. So we're kind of excited slash nervous to use it because it's new, but it looks really really cool. And as we get through that, we'll get some YouTube stuff up on the Tiny House Experts YouTube channel to let you guys see how that's going and what we do with that stuff. Okay. Cool, Des. What's cool? Do you guys do any school programs to teach students about tiny houses? Yeah, actually, between California Tiny House and the Tiny House Experts here at Trailer Made, I would say that's a big chunk of what our day job is. Wouldn't you, Nick? Um, there's a uh, man. I almost want him here in the room with me to field this question. I think I'm going to be coming out there soon. Oh, did you steal it? It's yeah, yeah. We work together actually on those on a lot of those school projects. Nick has a curriculum, and many of the schools around the country teach their CTE students. That's construction training or construction technical education. Excuse me, CTE students how to build houses with our tiny house kits in the yard with Nick's curriculum, teaching them step by step what to do with that. So it's pretty cool. Uh, we don't currently have any online classes, Des. I'm sorry about that. Um, your thoughts on goosenecks versus bumper poles? Okay, now I got to talk about that for a second. Barb, no, I don't know anybody that's used mag oxide board in a tiny house. Nick, maybe somebody, if any of my other pro builders are in there, jump on that one. But I do want to talk to the gooseneck versus bumper pole thing here. Um, the most important thing to remember is that what I said earlier, most of these don't get moved. That's just the reality. A gooseneck is a very expensive upgraded trailer built to move frequently. And what I've discovered is that a lot of people, and I'm saying this maybe at my own detriment. Okay, so take this how you will, but it's to my benefit to sell you a more expensive trailer like a gooseneck. But it's not necessarily to your service for us to do that. And I learned that this past June at the Colorado Tiny House Festival when 20 some odd thousand people were in and out of our gooseneck, and everybody said, I want a 10-foot wide gooseneck tiny house because I got to have that 7-foot stand up loft in the front. Um, I said, cool, you're getting a gooseneck because you're going to move this around a lot. Oh, no, no. I want it for the loft. So I want to shift that paradigm a little bit to everyone that's listening. You don't need to have a gooseneck tiny house to put a loft up at 4 feet above the trailer floor and have kind of a split level, we call it a split level floor plan where you can stand up on the front or the back. Well, the front and the gooseneck, but um, doing that in a bumper pole trailer gives you one, a little more budget back into the house build. Two, gives you the option to maybe put in some built-ins or things like that around the outside of the house that you don't have when you have to cut away that bottom half for the truck that hooks the gooseneck up to. Just stuff to consider like that. You know, inside, if it's the floor plan you're going for, you can achieve that without the trailer. So just a quick um, kind of touch on that. I wanted to make sure you guys have I guess the best info possible on how I feel about goosenecks versus bumper poles. Bumper poles are cheaper. Ours tow fantastic. We're the best bumper pole builders on planet Earth. So I got no complaints moving our bumper poles. Goosenecks are bigger, heavier, more expensive, and they're built to be towed frequently. If you're not going to be one of those things, then I would consider maybe an extra wide trailer instead of an extra long trailer. Um, one to that point, I saw there was a. Let me just scroll up here really quick. There was a larger than average tiny home. A video earlier mentioned a tiny home could get up to 52 feet in length, which is just shy of what you're looking for. So, is that possible? And is as a gooseneck? Um, Yeah, we've done crazy, crazy long goosenecks before. And again, I want to make sure, and this is on our podcast and on our YouTube channel at the Tiny House Experts. Um, Build this thing to live in first, because you're going to spend more time living in it than you're going to spend moving it. 52 feet, that's as long as a semi trailer. Oh, gosh. Sorry, I lost the microphone there. That's as long as a semi trailer. And what it does after that is just kind of blows your budget on fuel, a tow vehicle, where you're going to put this thing. I'm trying to reframe everybody's uh, just the paradigm is that we tour the country in a tiny house that weighs 15 to 25 or 30,000 pounds. And not, again, that's the exception, not the rule. Not everybody's Christian and Alexis out there at Tiny House Expedition. Those guys are OG and they're gangster. And I've watched it with my own eyeballs, put 60 plus thousand miles on a tiny house. So I'm not saying don't do it or that nobody does it. I'm saying the large, large majority um, don't move these things very often, other than an occasional relocate. But again, that's spoken in detail in our podcast. I got about 7 more minutes left here of Q&A, and then there's one. Oh, here we go. There we go. Nick says his opinion is he's used TrailerMade goosenecks best if you're going to travel often with it. So that's kind of just wrapping up what we did too. But again, build it to live in, not to move. 10 wide by 30 to 40 feet long is our new 8 by 24. That's 80% of what leaves our yard every week. And that's 10 or 15 units every single week. And 75 or more percent of those are 10-foot wide and at least 30 feet long. And they're almost all bumper pulls because the park model movement has arrived. Cities, counties, states, insurance companies, and banks all like park models. So if you're planning a tiny house build, it's my very strong, encouraging advice to consider ANSI Park Model 119.5 certification. And you can get that done with, again, PacWest. You can get that done with NTA. You can get that done with the RVIA. And I think you can get that done with NOAA as well. So all of those guys out there, we use Pacific West for that. We get asked a lot. Um, some of these questions, I'm so sorry, I'm not going to be able to get all of them. But I will do a live chat. If you guys haven't already subscribed to my YouTube channel, we'll do a live chat. And if you'll keep these in mind, if you want to come back over the top tomorrow night, I'll jump on a live chat. I'll post up what time. And if you want to join us for that Q&A session to kind of tack on to the end of this, I'd love to, because I can see there's more questions coming at me than I'm going to have time to answer. Um, Chantel, I see you're scared of the cost might be get more Elijah in my dreams. Okay. Um, let's see. I'll come back to that in just a second, Chantel. I want to discuss just moving a tiny house every few years after living a few years in one spot. Perfect. Go listen to our podcast about debunking the 4 myths surrounding the tiny house industry. The one that we're talking about is we encourage people, one, don't go shopping for $100,000 truck. Olienka, our YouTube is at the Tiny House Experts. Um, the uh, the answer is don't go shopping for a 75 to $100,000 diesel truck that's equipped to move this. And that's going, you're still going to find limits. Some of the things that we were talking about here, a 52-foot gooseneck, there's no dually, no 3,500 that's going to move that and survive. You're going to kill $100,000 truck. Um, Oh, Chantal, there is a way to spend less than 100 grand for semis, but again, that's a semi trailer or a semi tractor. If you've not moved one of those, they're less than comfortable, less than ideal for daily driving use potentially. Do we invite experienced builders on our podcast, Nick, or friends? Yes, we do. Um, we just ask them to pick up the phone when we call and invite them. um, so the I see where you're going with this. um, Chantel, to just quick, yeah, you can get a truck, but again, are you going to spend your life on the road moving this thing, or are you going to move it from place to place on occasion? And if it's just going to be on occasion, my advice is to just hire the guy that's already got the semi and find the person that's already got the insurance and the experience and has the permits pulled, and build yourself a nice, wide, fat, tiny house that you can live well in and find a way to move when necessary. If you don't fall in that camp, then absolutely don't do that. It's not that way for everybody. But in our experience of 7,000 plus VIN numbers sitting under tiny homes this far in, most of the people end up in that category. I'm going to move it on occasion, but I really like where it is right now. So we're just going to leave it. And if you're in that category, do the same thing. Down here to, there was a question a moment ago about, do I have a preference on SIPs, lumber, or metal? My preference is obviously to metal. I talk about that. I manufacture that. I sell that, and I believe in that. Um, and let's see. Can you travel or transportation go someday? Let me see if I can understand this question from Annie. Chantel, no, 48 is not too large for a semi, but yes, it is too close to semi length for a what we call a light or medium duty truck to move, I think. Um, Annie says, can you travel with the transportation since you're both going to the same destination anyway when moving the tiny house on wheels? I'm not 100% sure that I can get that down in the last 2 minutes, but if you could email me that question again and maybe reword it just a little, I didn't quite understand, but it's Damon at Trailer Made Trailers. That's DAMON at my company, trailermadetrailers.com. At France, hey, what's up? Thank you, Christy, for listening. We appreciate you. And let's see. Jennifer, thank you for being around tonight. Chantel, to answer that last question, so 40 to 45 is the best halfway point. A moment ago, I mentioned that 80% of what leaves our yard is 10 feet wide and between 30 and 40 feet long. So a 10 by 40, for example, that is our second most popular trailer now. If you're planning to stay inside of 8 feet, 8.5 feet for permitting purposes, I want to spend the last 30 seconds of this first thanking everybody for listening tonight. And last, the permit process in most states, we discuss that in length on our podcast on YouTube at the Tiny House Experts, but it's 15 to 30 bucks for a permit. Go get a permit when you decide to move this house, and everybody stop trying to build a hallway to live in and put all you and your stuff in there. Thank you guys. Lori, thank you. Great to be here and putting my face to this company and this absolutely wonderful opportunity to chat with you all tonight. Again, we're going to do a wrap up. I'll do a follow up Q&A tomorrow night. I'll at least put it up live on my YouTube channel. So please subscribe, and we'll get a post out so that everybody has the opportunity to get all their questions answered that didn't get to catch my eye tonight. Thank you guys so much. Wonderful, wonderful being here. And it's been a blessing to be a part of this tiny house movement with all of you. And we'll continue for the next 10 or 12 years leading from the front like we have the last. Cheers, and enjoy your weekend. Thanks so much.